In this episode of the meal prep series, we're making chicken chow mein. This is a really easy recipe to make. It's cheap, tastes fantastic, and it will have you set up for the whole week in less than 30 minutes. Let's get straight into it. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alright, starting out, we're going to need 600 grams of boneless and skinless chicken thigh. With this, we can trim off any excess fat, which is optional, and then we're going to slice these into thin strips. Remember, the smaller the size, the quicker these will cook, and you want to make sure they're the same size, that way they all cook at the same time. With that done, add the chicken into a bowl, and then we're going to make a sauce which consists of 60 milliliters of low sodium soy sauce for that nice savory umami flavor, 30 milliliters of Shaoxing wine for even more umami and a nice depth, 20 grams of runny honey for a nice little sweetness, which is optional, you don't have to add it, 10 milliliters of sesame oil for a beautiful infusion of nutty flavors, 60 grams of oyster sauce for even more umami savory flavoring, and finally 12 grams of arrowroot, which is pretty much a substitute for corn flour. This is going to help thicken once the sauce becomes hot. This can then be given a good mix through with a whisk, mainly concentrating on breaking up that arrowroot, making sure it's mixed completely through. But with that done, this can be set aside for the time being, but we are going to add in 2 tablespoons of it into the chicken, just to get a nice little marinade going. Along with that, add in some ground white pepper. Don't use cracked black pepper for this recipe, otherwise it will burn a lot quicker. And then we can just mix this through the chicken, just to allow it to marinate for about 30 minutes whilst we prepare everything else. As for everything else, we're going to need 150 grams of Chinese cabbage, also known as wombok. This can be shredded with a nice sharp knife. The correct terminology for this is chiffonade, and what you're ending up with is something that looks like this. 2 medium to large sized carrots are then needed. We're going to top and tail these, just slicing off the top and the bottom. Slice them in half to make them easier to work with, then just take a slice off the side so it can sit flat on the bench without it wobbling around. And then we're going to slice this into thin strips the whole way across. Once you have the strips done, stack 2 or 3 on top of one another and then just slice these into matchstick cuts, which is also called julienne. Now this is completely optional, but I'm going to be using 1 baby bok choy. If you're going to use it, just slice off the stem, just removing it, and then we can break this up, and it will need to be washed because there can be quite a bit of dirt in there. Once you do have it washed, all we have to do is simply roughly chop it. This will break down quite a bit, so it's good to be on the larger side. I'm also going to be using 2 spring onions or scallions. We can separate the white root from the green stem. These are going to be used in 2 different parts of the recipe. As for the white root, this can be sliced on a straight angle to create little circle pieces, and this is going to be going in the chow mein. And then with the green stem, this can be sliced on a slight angle, and this is going to create diamond or oval shaped pieces, which will be used as a garnish. Last but not least, we're going to need 4 cloves of freshly peeled garlic. Place these on the board, use the side of your knife with the blade facing down, and then just push down to crush, which will activate the allicin, which is the flavor compound in the garlic. Once these are crushed, simply just give them a rough chop. We're going to break this down into nice fine pieces. You can use any sort of method here. You can even do this in a mortar and pestle. I just don't recommend grating them because the paste will burn a lot quicker than the roughly chopped. When you're ready to cook, place a large pot of water over a high heat, bring it to a boil, and then we're going to add in 500 grams of egg noodles. These are fine noodles, and what we're going to do is cook them for 1 minute less than the packet instructions. We want these to be al dente, we don't want them to be fully cooked through, otherwise you'll end with mush. But once you're left with these beautiful cooked noodles, so that still obviously have a nice little bite to them, remove them from the stovetop, and then just pour them straight through a sieve, and just allow them to drain whilst we do everything else. Now for the chow mein, we're going to place a large pan or wok over a high heat. Add in 1.5 tablespoons, which is about 30 milliliters of peanut oil, getting this really hot to the point that it starts to smoke. Then we can add in the marinated chicken, spread this out so it's not sitting on top of one another, and then we're going to leave this for 1 minute. Don't touch it, this will get a nice brown color on it without cooling the pan down too much. After that 1 minute, we can then give this a mix through, and we're just going to do the exact same thing for another 1 minute, cooking this for 2 minutes in total, but we don't want this to be cooked through, it will still be raw at this stage. After 2 minutes, we can then add in the roughly chopped garlic. We're going to mix this around continuously for 45 seconds. This will prevent it from burning, but the garlic will also add a beautiful infusion into that chicken. Next to go in is the shredded wombok or Chinese cabbage, along with the spring onion or scallion, carrot, and the bok choy if you're using it. Spread this out, and then we're going to mix this through really well and cook this for 2 more minutes. During this stage, these will all soften up and it will look a lot less than it actually is now, and it will be absolutely fantastic because we don't want to cook this all the way through. These leave a fantastic texture at the end. Once the vegetables are softened up slightly, add in those drained noodles. We can then spread these out, making sure to break them up a little bit because they will slightly clump from draining, but once it is mixed through, pour in all of that sauce. Just make sure you scrape the bowl and any arrowroot that might be on the bottom. And then we're going to continue mixing this for another 1.5 minutes, making sure we get this nice and saucy and everything picks up all of that flavour. Another optional ingredient is 150 grams of mung bean sprouts or bean shoots, along with some sesame seeds to taste. You really don't have to weigh these out. You can also toast them for that enhanced flavour. But with that in, all we have to do is mix this through. We can turn this off the heat now, and I am going to swap over to a spatula just to help mix all of this together and scrape anything from the sides of the pan. Once that is all done though, all we have to do is remove it from the stovetop. As for serving up, simply divide everything by 5. The containers I use are 750 milliliters in size. I have a link for them in the description if you're interested. Top them with the green stem spring onion as a garnish, which is obviously optional. But what we're then left with is these beautiful chicken chow mein meal preps. And these are the macros for the complete dish, and that is per portion. Now we're going to let these cool down for about 10 to 15 minutes before placing on the lids and then putting them in the fridge or freezer. They'll last up to 4 days in the fridge and up to 3 months in the freezer. And as for reheating, you can either do it in a pan or in a microwave. If you're going to do it in a pan, I recommend doing it over a medium heat, adding a splash of soy sauce to get things moving around again. And if you're going to do it in the microwave, just do it in bursts, mixing between each one. With all of that said and done though, we can then dig in. The thing I love most about these types of recipes is the fact that they're so simple and the ingredients are really minimal as well. There's a beautiful texture from all of those different vegetables. The chicken's beautiful and soft and juicy, and the flavor of that sauce is not overpowering, so everything balances really well. I highly recommend you try this recipe, and if you enjoyed this video, please do hit that like button and consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.
This thing is making me soft,